All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still talking about the future of education here, and it's taking a very different trajectory on this issue of school fees. Echesa, now what do we do from here? Because it seems parents are paying fees that they're not supposed to pay, and there's a lot of complaints coming through here on this issue of giving more money than what they were supposed to give. And I think I was looking for someone here. BK Mwau says, yesterday I took one for Form 1 admission. Fees in the structure was 20,300. On arriving, we were forced to pay M-Pesa extra 7,000 on unclarified things. We had money for bread, for miscellaneous, and it's absolutely nauseating, he says.
And Trevor, we are going back to what we've been saying in this forum as governance and management of our education system. What that parent is saying is actually the correct position on the ground. And if anyone from the Ministry of Education is watching this show, I want to refer them to a school in Kakamega County, a school called St. Peter's Mumias Boys High School. And in that school, Trevor, I can tell you that parents called me, about 3 of them. Whoever that was collecting fees, extra levies, at the gate was a PTA chairman. Because the principal knows that if they catch up with him, he will say it is the parent rep that was collecting this money. They have devised so many ways of evading from responsibility and from their crimes of commission. You summon a PA chairperson who does not know Form 1 parents and is collecting remedial fees. And for avoidance of doubt, tuition and remedial levies are banned by the Basic Education Act. You cannot levy. So they call outsiders to levy to avoid taking responsibility. The same school, the same person was levying 350 shillings shaving fee. How often do Form 1s shave within a span of 2 months? And you are collecting 350 shaving fees. When in the village, you can shave even for free or at 20 shillings or at 30 shillings, depending on the style you want on your head. Then why would you be investing so much in shaving? They were taking about 700 for labeling. And then they are saying they're collecting the bread fee at 500. Why all this? And who is benefiting? And for avoidance of doubt, what Kenyans ought to know, that we need to be more specific and more particular with how schools are managed more than how our CBF is managed. A school like Kakamega High School, Machakos Boys, Alliance Girls, their budget, their annual budget is by far and large more than what Kikuyu constituency receives as CDF. At Machakos Boys, you could get that the principal is managing about 234 million Kenya shillings. In Kiamba CDF, we only have about 180,000 shillings, 80 million shillings. Yet we are following the MPs more than we are concerned with the management of these schools. The idea of books, and what Janet has said is very true. What the problem with CBC is that the practical aspect and getting the material to give it the practical aspect is a bit expensive to the rural parents. And to that extent, CBC may not be fully realized by a rural population or by an average parent. But 80% of these textbooks that parents are asked to buy, I am a trained teacher, they are of no relevance. KLB used to approve books that were relevant to our curriculum and to our syllabus. But I want to go back to something that I stopped single-handedly in a school, and the same school called St. Peter's. I did so because I'm an old boy and I come from the same region. In this school, every Form 1 was being asked to come with a reader, a class reader. This is a simple English storybook, about 120 pages. But the school, through one of the teachers, was selling the single book at 1,000. And then the Kiswahili book at 1,000. Things that you can get on River Road or in Kakamega town at 250 shillings. And you are making it compulsory for every learner. You are making a profit of 750 shillings for every learner, and no one is there to regulate you. And if parents rush to the education officers at the county and the sub-county level, the sub-county officer tells them, we shall sort out with the principal. It is actually a system of cartel. To solve this particular problem regarding the cost, the escalating cost of education in our basic education institutions, is to call out the minister and to call out the permanent principal secretaries and education officials and say they are stealing from very poor parents. They are killing the dreams of young Kenyans because they have failed to act, or they are abetting these crimes in secondary schools for selfish and personal gains. Matiang'i was a very selfless person, and that was why he was able to push cartels out of these textbooks. But after the exit of Matiang'i, the textbooks are still a scandal in schools. Why are we supplying students in schools with the same books every year? Actually, in a secondary school today, if you're teaching English, then you can give one student 4 textbooks, the similar content. Every year we buy, because someone at the ministry wants to say we have had a cost. And we even have worse scenarios where these books are taken to the schools, they are received during the day, and they are taken back to the suppliers during the night. And the same books will go to a different school. Why are we creating avenues for looting even where we have vulnerable Kenyans as parents?
Yeah. Kasanga, I want you to make a commitment on this. You mentioned that you've spoken about it in Parliament, but what are the solutions and what are you going to do about this going forward? I know it's not entirely your responsibility, but you're the legislators and you can speak on their behalf. Because I see a lot of complaints from parents about this school fees issue. It's in fact the one that's taking center stage.
You know, Trevor, listening to all the panelists today, it is very clear that we definitely need to call out the ministry when it comes to enforcement of some of the policies and the protocols which they have rolled out, in good faith, of course, to make sure that education is accessible and affordable. But it's also important, and we have to really be candid, something that Janet Muthoni has mentioned there, discipline. We have to call out ourselves as Kenyans. Surely, if we cannot all share in the vision that investment in education for our children is a single most critical thing that is going to turn around our country, then where are we going as a nation? I mean, how can a few Kenyans, go to benefit, from the most vulnerable citizens of our nation? We have to call out each other when it comes to these issues. We have to call out these individuals who are making money out of our students through these, cartels that they have with the schools when it comes to selling of education material as well as uniforms. If we don't start calling out ourselves even as citizens, then, we are all failing in this fight. This fight has to be fought by the citizens, and it has to be, of course, government has to now crack the whip. If it has been done before, then there's no reason why it cannot be done again. So again, I repeat, we call out the education ministry, but at the same time, as Kenyans, we need to do something. Even in Parliament, we speak on all these things. In Parliament, you'll see, questions being brought to committee. They are put in the reports, and it's for the government to pick them up again and then do as the parliamentarians have recommended. So again, the gap still remains there in the ministry, that then they need to crack the whip and sort this thing out. But also, as a nation, to appreciate where is it that we want our nation to go. One of the panelists there rightfully said when he was talking about Tibet, if we don't invest in our youth, then we cannot say we are investing in a country for the future. True enough, infrastructure is not what makes a country, but it's human resource. It's human resource starts from the youth. We have a youthful population right now that is a majority of the population. And if we are not careful to channel them in the right direction, Trevor, we will be failing as industry leaders, as we sit here in the panel, as parliamentarians and leaders from all walks of life. We have to really fight to make sure we streamline this issue. We must fight these cartels, because clearly this is a single most, outstanding thorny issue that is affecting the education system today, is about the cartels. And these cartels are part of the fabric of our nation. We have seen them across board in every other, government institution, even without government institution, even the private sector is engaging in a lot of all these cartels. As a people, we have to decide which way are we going to go.
All right.
Because we're just eating ourselves, Trevor, and it's very frustrating sometimes.
So will you be summoning the CS at some point? This is a commitment I'm asking for.
I'm not in the education committee, but I can take cue and raise a question definitely in Parliament, so that the education minister can be summoned by the Committee of Education. That is possible, Trevor.
All right. Thank you. I want to take a quick closing remarks from my panelists right now on our conversations in the future of education here before we cross over back to the Deputy President exclusive interview there with Inoro. And I'll come to you, Ndungu, because he has mentioned that bottom-up approach again, which is about to go into in just a bit. Where do we go from here? Your argument was that the bottom-up approach would be best done from the education system. But where do we go from here?
Yes, Trevor, this country has 14 million young people aged between 18 and 35. The Kenya Bureau of Statistics tells us 4 million of those young people could be working. They are not working because we are told there are no jobs. Yet last year, we imported 100 billion shillings worth of food. Those are jobs we shipped outside of Kenya, essentially. Why? Because our farmers are too old to grow the food. Our young people don't have the skills to grow the food, don't have the aptitude, don't have the technology, don't have the support. Who is supposed to provide those skills? Is the TVET system. The TVET system is failing. And I think if we are going to demand changes so that we get this bottom-up economic development to happen, or whichever iteration we come up with during the political competition, because that's going to be part of the political competition, which is a good thing. Whichever we come up with, the need to get the majority of our young people actively engaged in generating the resources and the jobs for themselves and for this country comes down to giving them the skills and support to use those skills.
Okay. Janet, closing remarks?
Yeah, I just want to read to the Cabinet Secretary so that he can just try and understand what parents are saying. A lot of these school uniforms to be supplied in schools, and I'm seeing here one long-sleeved blouse, which is white, a white shirt, at 850 shillings, and then also 2 short-sleeved blouses at 800 shillings. This is just one of the items that I have picked here. And I want to tell him that it is not true, it is not acceptable that a child in Kawangware slums will leave a shirt hung there at the Mtumba for 200 shillings to go and buy it in school at 800 shillings. It is not acceptable, and we are not going to move this way. Because what we are doing, we are marginalizing more people. And I'm even wondering, even when we talk about all these bottom-up things that we are talking about, what is bottom-up about fleecing the same people that you're trying to empower? You know, why won't we first protect, the parents? Don't even protect the parents, protect the children. Put up policies to make sure that at least the children can be able to go to school. And one of the biggest challenges I want to tell the Cabinet Secretary, in no humility, surely, he must pronounce himself on school uniforms this week at minimum.
Okay. Echesa, closing remarks?
Thank you, Trevor. I want to join my sister Janet in calling out the Minister of Education and particularly the Cabinet Secretary for Education and his principal secretaries. This unmitigated exploitation of our average parents in this country is a threat to the right to education, because the right to education is no longer a statutory right, is a constitutional right. And the CS and his agents has a responsibility to ensure that basic education, and more so in secondary school education, is affordable, is accessible, is of quality, and is flexible. If this trend is going to continue, Kenyans will be left with no option but to lead a revolution towards Jogo House and ensure that the CS complies with the enforcement of the policies and declarations and threats that he is making. Threats alone will not add value. Let him go to the ground. And let him not rely on the reports of the sub-county education officers and even the county education officers, because they are feeding him on lies as they join cartels in exploiting our parents.
All right. Kasanga?
Yeah, Trevor, thank you again for having me on the platform. And it's very difficult to add on to what each of the panelists have said. I believe they have really summed it up. And just to maybe reiterate, the fact that we are not going to turn around our economy if we are not investing in the education of the young people, and if we are not equipping our young people in the tertiary level with the right skill set, the right equipment for them to be able to get into the job market and actually do some work that can create income for themselves. Any politician coming up in the next electoral cycle is inheriting already a government that is in deficit when it comes to the amount of loans that have been used for infrastructure development. Therefore, the focus must shift into education, quality education for our young people, if we're going to really turn around this economy in the next 10 years, Trevor. That is my contribution for now. And then, of course, lastly, Kenyans, we have to call out each other when it comes to cartels. Let us call out those business people. Even in as much as we're asking the government to crack their whip, even as citizens, we have our duty to look out for each other and to also call out from the most vulnerable people in our society. Thank
All
you,
right.
Trevor.
Thank you so much.